Hello everybody, welcome to Dungeons & Drams. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different, and I know I say that a lot. In this case, this one's really going to be a lot different than normal. So usually I'm generating a prompt, I'm throwing it up on the screen, I'm saying this is what you should use, go copy it from the Patreon, right? But in this case, I don't know how to create a fantasy language, but I want one. So we're going to use ChatGPT to not only tell us how we should go about doing this, but also generate our own prompts to then in turn prompt ChatGPT for a fantasy language. So you'll see what I'm getting at. Before I start, I do just want to say I asked ChatGPT how to go about making this video. So whereas normally I'm coming up with a lot of this ideas and I'm kind of writing the prompts myself, in this case, I wrote the prompts that then in turn help ChatGPT to write its own prompts to make this video. So I just want to put that out there. You know, I feel like being honest about usage of AI and creating a video about how to use AI feels important, right? So here we go. I'm a dungeon master playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I wrote that part. I'm creating a fantasy language for a tribe of sea elves. I would like the language to sound melodic and fluid, similar to how Elvish might sound. Please generate a list of 10 sample syllables that reflect this, focusing on vowel-heavy, smooth sounds. So what I ended up doing here is I basically said, I want to create a fantasy language. Help me to do that. And it gave me a list of, I think, like 6 different parts. You could see those down here below because it's the different chapters of this video. And it kind of told me how I should go about generating those different things. And at the end of this, we'll have something that we can use to either create a riddle or an inscription, or even just like, you know, wish somebody farewell as you're talking in this other language. So we're going to focus on sea elves. Feels like it makes some sense. Elvish is a language that's been defined over years, and you know, putting a little spin on it of making underwater kind of feels like it might make some sense. Here are 10 different syllables that will make some sense, and looking at these, they feel Elvish. So lay, re, fein, elu, Eo, Nua, Vi, maybe? Sarah, Island, and Oru. So all of these, actually, they kind of sound right. This is definitely going to be something that you have to just feel out. And if you're writing a book or something, if you're actually like writing a language, don't do it this way. Just, this is something for DMs or GMs to use to make their game a little bit better. Next, we're going to work on grammar. Now, this is going to be something that kind of keeps language consistent, and it helps you to formulate your own sentences. So in this language, the verb should come at the end of the sentence, and it should follow a subject-object-verb structure. Could you provide a few examples to demonstrate this? So once we do this, it will come up with a couple of different little sentences, and then probably its translations. So at least it did when I practiced, but we'll see. Yep, there we go. Cool. Now, one thing I do like about this is using words like Luna, L-U-N-A. We all kind of know that that means moon, and when you look at it, it means moon. So that's pretty cool. So if we have Luna Oru Le, which we look up here, and we'll see, well, I can't quite show it to you, but Luna's not up there, but Oru is, and Le is. So if we look down at our sentences, we have Luna Oru Le, which is the moon shines. We have Eri Sela Vai, which is the sea calls. Island Thala Fein, the bird sings. And Nuara Eluin Ri, the stars glow. And more. But one thing that's cool is if you were to put these in front of your players and give them some words, now you've got kind of like a cryptographic sort of puzzle, which people are going to enjoy. You know, determining, you know, decrypting a language is something very possible in your game, and there's no reason that your players can't do it. These sentences reflect the melodic structure with the verb at the end, following the subject-object-verb rule. Next, we're going to do the part that you probably would have assumed you should start with, and that's kind of common words. But until you determine the format of your language, it doesn't actually make as much sense to have words until you know how to use those words. So in this case, we're now kind of making a little bit of a dictionary. Can you help me create a small vocabulary for a sea elf language? I need the following words: water, sea, friend, and safe travels. Additionally, create a phrase meaning, may the tides be with you. The words shall feel fluid and melodic, fitting a seafaring culture. So in this case, you could absolutely add whatever words you want. If you're making like a Dwarven language, you could see how you could easily change this around, basically just change what type of race you're working with. As you can see, it put out some words here, and that's totally fine, but I don't really know how these are supposed to be pronounced. When you see them on the page, I mean, as you've heard, I'm kind of struggling through some of these. Maybe I'm getting them right, maybe I'm not. This is a fantasy language, who knows? guess I'm the boss, but I'd rather have it sound right. So I'm going to ask it to put the pronunciation next to the words. So we're going to put, whenever you generate a word, could you include the pronunciation next to it? This is much better. Now looking at this, I could totally tell how these are supposed to be pronounced. So we have Aili, Sila, Thira, and Lira Sela Ra. Well, you might have to practice this a little bit before. That one's rough. Give me that benefit. Okay, that one's a little rough. Lira Sela Ra. Okay, I feel like if you kind of tried that a few times, you'd get it. I'm not even gonna try this next one. If you end up needing it, like if you need a prop or something and you want to add this to your game, you might actually want to have the script. So, or, like the way that the letters work, the alphabet, right? I'd like to create a written script of this language. I would like the script to look flowing and wave-like as if inspired by the sea. Could you describe how the letters or symbols might look? Please explain how someone might write or carve these symbols in stone or on scrolls. So something interesting. When I think about chiseling stone, which, I haven't done a whole lot in my life, but I have done it. And it's very difficult to do anything flowing. It's usually going to be kind of like carved, right? And if you think about carving something underwater, I don't know. I guess they're elves. Maybe they're just really good at it. But I would almost picture an underwater language being much harder to kind of chisel into rock, because you're not going to write it. It's going to disappear. You're going to be chiseling this into something, meaning that they're probably going to be blockier letters. In this case, it feels like it should be flowy, and that's okay. It's magic anyway. But if I were doing this myself, I think I would actually probably make it a little bit less flowy. But they're elves. There is quite a bit here, so I'm not going to read this all, but one thing I thought was interesting is it actually did address when carved into stone, these symbols might be lightly etched with rounded tools, designed to emphasize the flowing shapes. Stone-carved letters would look smooth and worn as if naturally shaped by the tide over time. So they did kind of address the fact that these are going to be carved underwater. I thought that was pretty clever. But in general, it's saying, it should be flowy and it should kind of look like the waves. And Sanskrit kind of comes to mind when I'm reading through this. We could ask it to generate an image of what it thinks that this language should look like. This is pretty interesting, actually, and when you look at some of these letters, if I felt like taking the time, there's definitely a lot I could, kind of take from this. Obviously, the waves are a little bit of a flourish, I suppose. But looking at some of the letters, right? So you have like a L up here, you have a T over here, maybe like a D, another L for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe this is an F. But some of these do make a lot of sense, and I could see using these. So I don't know. I think it did a pretty good job. What do you guys think? So we just bothered to create this whole fantasy language, and other than just kind of saying hi or hello or having some written words on a parchment or something, what else could we do with this? Well, I mean, we're doing sea elves. Let's think of an underwater temple, and in this case, we need an inscription for an ancient sea elf ruin. This inscription should say, "Only those who honor the sea may enter," in their language. This inscription will serve as a puzzle for my players to decipher, so please provide both the Sea Elf version and a clue on how to translate or pronounce it. So basically, this part I wrote, right? So I came up with this little thing, and the idea is that they just, I like to leave open-ended stuff for my players. I don't really care what they do. Maybe they bow. Maybe they show that they have, water breathing. Maybe they just go in, but they're I worship the god of the oceans. It doesn't really matter, but it's fun to let them be creative. Unless they do something blazingly against the sea god or something like that, I would probably just let them enter without any issues. Excellent. So we have the Sea Elf version, which is pronounced like this, and I'm not even going to try. But, if this was something that you wanted to put in your game, you're going to spend a little bit of time pronouncing this. And when you do, when you have your delivery, just sell it. It doesn't matter. You own this language. It could sound like whatever you want. Your players will not know the difference. So if you want to, just pronounce it however you will. All right. This means only those who honor the sea may enter. Now, you need some clues, right? Because your players aren't going to have any idea how to pronounce this language or what this language means. Unless they cast tongues or something like that, they're not really going to understand what this means unless you give them some clues. So put some stuff around the outside of the temple. You have maybe a couple of these. Maybe give them, you give this big long word here, but you have Sela, which they find out means the sea, because maybe you have a plaque with the ocean on it or something that says Sela. Be creative with broken off pieces of your underwater temple too. Maybe it's part of a bigger sentence, but you get it. Okay. So we have a few different ways that you could do this if you want to. And using this language, we could come up with whatever we want and just say, hey, could you translate this into the Sea Elf language for me? Now, in this case, maybe they just place a shell at the entrance or something like that, and we let them in, no problem. All right, easy. All right, last thing we're going to do here is dialogue. So if we have an NPC, you know, we're not going to be crazy about having them speak in a whole lot of language unless you want to, in which case that could be very confusing for your players, which could be fun. Maybe they recognize a word here or there. Just make sure that you've given them some clues ahead of time. So it'd almost be like listening to somebody speak in a language that you don't know, but you know a couple of words of, and you kind of get like a hint as to what they're talking about. Could make for a funny situation if you purposely mislead them into saying like, you know, make sure that you go over there, but you actually make it sound like, make sure you don't go over there, you know, or something like that, or the opposite. Anyway, so I'm designing a dialogue for an NPC who is a sea elf. I'd like them to greet the players with a phrase in their native language that means, welcome friends of the sea. Could you generate this greeting in the sea elf language and include an English translation? So right here, this could be, and I did this one on purpose, this could be the way that you teach them the word for sea, or the word for friends. If they're paying attention, maybe they make a note. So if we go ahead and prompt this. So let me go ahead and break this down, because one thing that this is doing really well is being consistent. So if we see the word Sela, we now know that that means sea, right? But we've gone through that a few times. This is where it's really cool. We have this word Tia Nora. Jeez. All right, we have the word Tia Nora. This means friends who, or friends of. And we could tell that because if you look at kind of the root of the word Tia, that actually, if we scroll up here to friend, we have Tira. Oh, sorry, Tira. So we have Tira Nora, which friends of. So it's being consistent, at least with the root of the word. And if your players are clever, they could figure that out. I think that's really actually very cool. I did not expect it to do that. I was hopeful it would, but I did not expect it to. This video is admittedly a little bit niche, but coming up with a script that will make your players think is just another level of cryptographic kind of riddle that you could give your players. And I think this is a very cool way to do it. Luckily, Sea Elf kind of works out really well, and the Elvish language is kind of well defined anyway. So this all worked out well. But try it out with other languages. Maybe you have, you have giants who are not known for being very vocal, I guess, or having much to do with speaking. So maybe you have more like blunt words like rock or war, but instead they just talk in like chunks. Whereas this is like a whole sentence. Maybe giants talk in like rock, war, fight, you know, something like that. Anyway, let me know if you guys come up with any cool languages. I'd love to hear about it. This is something that I actually think has a lot of potential and kind of goes into another realm of what ChatGPT can be used for, whereas a lot of people will use it to proofread their papers or to generate emails or something like that. Language is something it does very, very well, which is kind of funny considering it's a computer. But generating a new language for a fantasy world, this is great. I think it did a very, very good job. All right, let me know in the comments below if you'd like any specific ideas for these type of videos. Always open to whatever you guys would like to see. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to check the Patreon for the full list of all the prompts as normal. And I will see you next week. Cheers.